Negar, welcome and good to see you here.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jiyan. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to Dr. Romano and Dr. Hayati, and I was wondering if I could start by complimenting what they both suggested, particularly because they were looking from a very state-centric perspective, and you run a human security center.
Yes.
So I thought that maybe I should expand this discussion a little bit to talk about opposition and people as well. So as you can see, the war, so I completely agree with Dr. Hayati, is that nobody can get out of this war anymore. So we are at this stage that even if Iran says we are not doing it, continue fighting, they're going to lose. America can't get back because there's no true tangible gain yet, a strategic gain. Israel is the same. So we are all locked in a way in this war for a while. And it would be good to kind of look at what's happening in Iran to complement what we have been hearing so far. So the war has further destabilized the regime. As you know, we had a major uprising in Iran in 18 and 19 January. Thousands of people killed. We have different numbers from 3,000 to 4,000 to 50,000 people over 2 nights. These were also not ethnically segregated. So amongst the people who were killed by the Islamic Republic, you have Kurds and Arabs and Persians, and so it's a very mixed population that were killed. So after that, probably very similar to Trump's administration, the Islamic Republic didn't believe that America would attack them, particularly because of the geographical position of the Strait of Hormuz. They have always believed in the Strait of Hormuz and believed that they can control it. And no other president before President Trump had actually stepped into Iran because of the geopolitical nightmare that the Strait of Hormuz can bring. But regardless of that, so Iran believed that the war can help them. A fraction of the the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard, believed that they can mobilize people around the territorial integrity. They can create quite a lot of rift between Kurds, particularly, and other ethnic groups, because Kurds in Iran are the only ethnic groups in Iran that have a very organized system, a very historical legitimacy in fighting decentralization of power. So it became the kind of main target of the regime as well. So what is happening in the last 2 months is that while regime has practically failed in creating this propaganda, there is no million mass protests in Iran. Everybody is trying to camp every day. They are trying to bring more people on the streets, and they kind of not very successful. So there is, but I think one of the major points that people often underestimate is the economic situation of Iran. So after the 12 days war, Iran's inflation jumped from 40% to 59%. Now we have kind of unofficial reports that say on the basic goods, the inflation is now in 3-digit numbers, so 100%, 105%. And the economy of Iran is moving towards a dollarization, which means that everything you buy it with dollar. There was actually a shop opened in Iran a couple of weeks ago, said it's a $5 pizza shop. So your rial and tuman doesn't mean anything anymore. You have to have dollar, which means that the pressure will be extensionally very hard on the lower income and the poorer families across Iran. So this is not related ethnically. So there is an economic situation. There is a situation that there is no air defense. There is no water defense. There's no really all of these are gone. And it seems that the Islamic Republic has been running based on these Basiji-led kind of like community-led initiatives when they come in the streets and they scream for hours to tell people in the city that they're still in power. So the economy is one part. You can see a rift and a division within the leadership of the Islamic Republic, those of them who remained. So we hear rumors and kind of signs of disagreement between the Revolutionary Guards, who now have a coup and completely controlling the system in Iran, and the Pezeshkian's government, who now has a government that is inefficient. And he warned a couple of days ago that in 3 weeks, Iran's economy will just flat. So we no longer will have an economy. So there is a bickering between the two groups. You can see that some days Pezeshkian comes and announces something, and then the Revolutionary Guards silence them. But if I do have a couple more minutes, I also want to say how this has impacted the opposition. So as you know, opposition is forming and it's shaping since Jiyan Azadi, since the Women Life Freedom, we do have a very strong, significant organizational move towards the democratization process. Of course, the original seed of the opposition were a group who were very supportive of Reza Pahlavi as the monarchist. But as we go through this war, I think the Kurdish group also clarifying their position. There is a new Congress called the Freedom Congress, or Azadi Kongre Azadi, that has started. We had Kop Danan, who is the leader of Pajak, yesterday had a discussion and a speech in the Congress that was very much into discussion of territorial integrity and the combination and decentralization of power so that we all can work through a democratic state. So if I want to say something about which is different, and when I say Kurd, this particularly, I'm talking about Kurds of Iran, specifically, is that maybe it is a historical thing. So Iranians, regardless of who they are, they don't see Kurds as a group in Iran, and actually it belongs to the Kurds. So the Kurds are the original owners of this tradition, and it has been this glue, regardless of all the pressures of the central governments over the history, the problems, the disagreements, and the discriminations against the Kurd, this national glue that kind of bring us to live together, even under huge, immense pressure, still continues to do that. So I can see that, and as an Iranian who is unfortunately not Kurd ethnically, I really, really hope that this process continues, that the Kurds become part of this larger opposition rather than be the auxiliary object of a group of power to go and fight a war. When I was in New Zealand, I'm sure that Jiyan knows about this, Nikki Hager, who is one of the major writers and investigative journalists. He wrote a book called Fighting Not the Other People's War. And I think this reminds me of the situation that Kurds have. I think that as a part of a group, if there is a scenario or a process where there should be a combination of outside pressure and forces and inside uprising, this should be including everyone in Iran. This shouldn't, like, to me, and I think that the opposition collectively have this position, is that if we're going to fight this regime from inside, we all going to fight it together. The fact that, and I think this is my observation, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but my observation is that Kurdish parties also are very well aware of this and about the history that happened to them in Syria and Iraq, what happened during the time that it was, and I don't think that they necessarily want to be separated from this national movement. We do have a national movement in Iran. It has been going on for a long time. Jiyan Azadi was a Kurdish movement that gave a huge transformational, cultural transformation to Iran. It inspired everyone. People in Baluchistan were fighting for a Kurdish girl. So I think these are the beauties of human security that we can see is in action. So one part of it is the determination or the will of great powers, but the other part that is very important is that, to me, the Kurds of Iran and this time have decided to join a much bigger and be a part of this bigger movement. Now, if we're going to fight it from inside, we all have to fight it. That doesn't mean you're Arab or Baluch or Kurd or Persian. We're all going to fight it. I don't think that it will be a case, a scenario, even like Syria, where the Kurds could be separated and put as a fighting force. And actually, geopolitically, it's very, very impractical because you have a very small corner in the northwest of a country that have thousands of kilometers of border, and we have a very, very strong, bad historical experience of Halabja, of fights, of bombarding Kurdish villages. My understanding is that we are going more and more through that place, that if there is an inside pressure, we all have to be joining this. So thank you, Jiyan, for giving me this.
But in 5 minutes,
So
if you could
first of all,
please.
I am pleased that I mentioned a name that caused a lot of excitement in our panel discussion. I said at the beginning that I am not an expert in Kurdish politics. I didn't actually want to say it is a part of democratic integration. I don't think like that. From my observation, whether through the coalition that the political parties, Kurdish political parties had, this is separate, as you know, a couple of weeks ago, or the positions of Kemalist parties are taken, or the position. So my point was never to talk about democratic integration. In fact, I completely disagree that Kurds in Iran are talking about democratic integration. They don't, because even in the discussions we had, like I heard the speeches, there was a very determination to say that we are insisting on our identity. They have organizations, they have structures. So I don't actually see it as Kurds being in the position that they are in Turkey. This is a completely distinctive. What I see is happening is that the Kurds and the political parties, Kurdish political parties, have maybe even short term, but they have a strategic coalition with other groups that are fighting against the Islamic Republic in Iran. That we can say. But whether this is going to be now, I also would love to have another discussions with Dr. Hayati sometimes to talk about what form of federation or federalism could actually benefits the Kurds better. Who would, what is it, the decentralization model that we have? Is it so sorry. So I think that if there was a misunderstanding in my point, I apologize. I do believe that they are talking about whether short term or the long term very strategic collaboration with other Iranians. What I meant is that I don't see any passion in Kurds to come on the front and becoming a Peshmerga, to put the Peshmerga in the front to be slaughtered for something that they have no guarantee for, and they know that they can achieve in a short-term strategic coalition in a better way with other groups rather than in isolation. So I wanted to mention that your point here about monarchist. So we have two models of governments that are going to come after this regime. It's either parliamentary republic, which is going to be a federal parliamentary republic or any other form of parliament, but it's either going to be a parliamentary republic or it's going to be a constitutional monarchy. There are two models that are on the ground. if you want to say. And there was a question in the panel to me, and I want to answer that too. So whether it is a constitutional monarchy or we have a republican. Now, even I must say that even in the case of constitutional monarchy, we do have a case of Norway, which is a federal constitutional monarchy. So none of these negates the federalism of it or a decentralized model. So I wanted to mention that that's necessary. Whether Reza Pahlavi is going to talk, I don't know whether his intention is. I don't think we can necessarily determine the intention of politicians, but I do know that the civil society of Iran is insisting on that. So whether they are pushing Reza Pahlavi to accept this, whether I don't think maybe it's Trump who can do this, but it might be the case that he kind of thinks that he has all the power, but he doesn't. Why did he get a lot of popularity? It's because after the Woman Life Freedom point, 2 years after that, we had a huge, significant cultural revolution that has taken place, but it wasn't successful to get rid of the regime. That's the reality. So when you think about that, all of a sudden Reza Pahlavi's name is coming up. That doesn't mean that people of Iran all of a sudden became monarchies. It's just a matter of we use different tools. And nobody actually talks about monarchy, by the way. Everybody talks about Reza Pahlavi in the context of these transitional period. Nobody says come and become a king. Nobody has talked about it. Whether he's successful or whether he's just a nice suburban dad who can't deal with the Revolutionary Guard, I don't know. That is a question of the development. Some politicians surprise us in the process of revolutions. Some politicians don't. So we're going to see. But I wanted to clarify one more point about dollarization, and then I stop my discussion. So dollarization happens when the economy falls, and there no longer the exchange rate is manageable. For example, in the case of Ecuador and Panama, both of them went through a process of complete collapse of their economy when the exchange rate was so high that they decided to accept US dollar, as their currency. Now, what does it happen? What does it do is that it creates a huge negative impact on the way that, for example, lower economic group or even middle class economic group are involved or get involved or can live. And it also creates a huge amount of poverty, and it creates a gap between the poor and the rich. The dollarization have taken place in many cases. I think in reality in Tehran, it is when every dollar is about 1.5 million rial. It means that your economy has already collapsed, which means that you are actually buying the prices of everything in oil prices. And as soon as the government can no longer put subsidies into petrol, gasoline, that means that that's where the whole structure starts to collapse. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Negar. Thank you.